everybody. Welcome back to What Now, a podcast for the lost and found. This is your host, Amanda, and I'm so very excited. We have a brand new guest here today. This is Ash Cebulka. She is a transformation guide and speaker who helps people create meaningful and sustainable changes in their life. She combines neuroscience, intuitive practices, and spirituality to help guide her clients to the insights that they need to help illuminate their conditioning, their old programming, their bad habits, and she helps them write a new heart-centered story and develop a new chapter in their life to live out their purpose and meaning in a beautiful way. So everybody, please welcome Ash to the show. So we're so happy to have you here. This is great. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I am absolutely fascinated with the work that you do and honestly the healing process that you offer people from all over the world to, step into their life purpose, because I kind of feel like that's one of the biggest existential questions everyone deals with, right? Like no matter what background you have or where you're from or what you're doing, everybody wants to know, am I doing what I'm meant to do? And if I'm not, how do I find that out? So you are a wealth of information here today, and I'm so grateful that you can bring that to our audience.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's after the 4th of July. We're on a holiday weekend. I don't know where you are, but here in Nashville, it's absolutely swelteringly hot, but it's beautiful out. So hopefully you get to have a good weekend as well too.
Yeah, it's done. So it's blazing.
Oh, in Charleston. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. One of my second favorite cities. My parents want to retire there, so they
Oh,
visit all the time. It's one of their absolute favorites. They like going over to Folly Beach
mm.
and stuff too. They feel like they can still be active, but it's not as busy of a city as Nashville is and stuff. So like they can relax a bit more, and they love being by the ocean. So they love water life.
Well, then it's a good place for them. It is a pretty chill city, I will say. I mean, to be honest, I don't even think of it as a city. Been here for 20 years.
Right.
Feels so small. Um, but it does kind of have the best of all worlds in one small little place. And it is on the water, which is a plus for sure.
Yeah, and phenomenal food. That's
Like,
usually what I do anytime I visit them. When they're there, I'll plan my whole visit around different restaurants that I can try,
of course.
all the oysters I can eat. Yeah, I love it. Well, that's so great. So for my listeners who may not have had the opportunity to work with you yet or hear about your offerings and your career path, could you give us a little bit of a background about who you are and the work that you're doing in kind of the health, wellness, career development type spaces?
Sure. So I started my business 10 years ago. I've been a serial entrepreneur, so I've had many businesses before this one. And I landed on coaching because kind of all of my other businesses were pointing in this direction. And my last business was, funny enough, a gourmet cookie boutique called Yes You May. And it was all
Oh, I love that.
giving people permission to just eat a damn cookie, like enjoy yourself, enjoy the simple pleasures of life. And what I ended up doing was talking to so many of my customers about this life philosophy and about kind of taking off so many of the rigidity rules that I had seen with clients that I had before, my clothing boutique that I had for 10 years. Anyways, long story short, I ended up enjoying the conversations more than making the cookies. Even though the business was successful, I was like, I think this is kind of really my thing, that I actually just want to be helping people rather than trying to do it through selling cookies. So I got certified in a lifestyle design coaching course 10 years ago. And for, I would say, about the first 7 years of having this business, it was predominantly focused on helping people with their purpose, and with a lot of people came to me about career. But always, always underneath the career questions were the layers underneath that were really about their relationship to self. And I guess it was about 3.5 years ago that I got certified in what's called PSYCH-K. And the reason why PSYCH-K is a subconscious modality where you're able to access the emotional part of the subconscious and reprogram your subconscious beliefs, your programming, conditioning, and close trauma loops while simultaneously creating new nervous system set points. So the reason why I did that is because I wanted to help people actually create change that lasted long term rather than, which I think a lot of us can probably relate to, reading a lot of self-help books, trying all the mantras, trying to like use our minds so much to change the way we think, and then only to end up back in the old patterns. And so when I discovered the power of the subconscious and what happens when you change those beliefs, I was determined to find a modality that really works and helps people do that. And that's how I discovered PSYCH-K. And so that we can get into that further, but that's what I do now with my clients, is really help them address the root cause of their challenges. And then when they change that belief structure, it changes every area of their life, including career.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And I'm glad that you're bringing up an alternative option, because I'm sure you've discussed this before with either your clients or in other interviews, that like there's a lot of self-help opportunity and life coaching. It's a big industry, but a lot of what they're trying to address, as you've mentioned in the past, is like your conscious mind, which is 3 to 5% of your brain, and then everything else is all of your subconscious. And so if your brain is that complex, you should try and get to the core and root of the problem. And yeah, you might ask that first question, like, what do you want to do with your life? Why? And you dig and you dig and you dig, and then you find out what the actual answer is. But you can't do that unless you're actually addressing the rest of the brain. So
Yeah.
it seems very interesting that a lot of these things that are mainstream are good tools, but without the combination of figuring out the rest of who you are, it won't always work. So that's great that you have an opportunity to share that with your clientele and with your audience. So that's very, very cool. Well, tell me a little bit about your first jobs, though. Like, were you always determined to be in business, or is your family like all entrepreneurs as well? Or like, were they kind of confused when you kept switching careers and moving on to different businesses and finally landed on coaching? I'm curious, because I know my family, they were very confused about me wanting to go into law enforcement. Like, that is something no one does in my family. They didn't get it,
Yeah.
until about 10 years in, and they're like, oh, wow, you're actually super successful at this. You're getting hired by these people to do these certain things. Like, okay, all right, we see it. We get it. Why you spent so much time trying to get to that point. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, I love that you stepped aside from what's the norm in the family. I think it takes a lot of bravery and courage to do that. And I love hearing that you were able to then find success, even though you have changed since. It's like that takes a lot of courage to listen to that inner voice and to take the risk. And uh, really, ultimately, what my work is about helping change the conditioning to support listening to that wisest voice inside of you, which is your intuition. And so my parents always encouraged me. I feel very lucky to listen to my intuition. Like, that was a conversation my mom's had with me since I was super young. And to answer your question, my dad is a nuclear engineer, rocket scientist, like brainy, smarty pants. And then my mom is an interior decorator. So they couldn't be more different as far as career paths go. And I'm the youngest of three. And I've always just had a lot of passion just kind of like oozing out of me, and very clear with like, if something really lights me up, I have no fear in going after it for the most part. And so I have been an entrepreneur since I've been 23. Uh, I'm not very good at working for other people. I learned at a young age, just because
Yeah.
I have my own idea of the way that, like, I'm very visual. Some would say like visionary, in the sense of like, I see a clear path and then I want to do it that way. So, so the first thing that I did was open a clothing and furniture store with my mom, which we had for 10 years downtown in Charleston, which was an absolute blast. And that was my passion for a long time. And then like I did a couple of other things. And then, like I told you, I had the gourmet cookie boutique, and now this business. So I
Right.
haven't had that many businesses, but I have such a passion for helping people. I love people so, so much. I always have since I was a kid. And I love helping people remember the innate power that resides within them, and that they're able to create what they want in their life. And so this was kind of just like actually a very natural evolution of the work that I've been doing for so long. I kind of dabbled in it with the other things until finally I just decided to take the big leap of, I'm just going to go all in on it. I'm not going to kind of do it on the side. I'm just going to go all in. And after doing that, it's been just so incredible to be doing this for 10 years and to help people through life transitions, because I've been through many myself. And
Right. Yeah.
not just with career, but with, grief and loss and divorce. And so I really empathize and understand what it's like when you're shedding that old skin and that identity of who you thought you were. Um, and what it takes as far as like the inner strength and that reservoir of courage that you have to tap into within yourself in order to like move through the grief and discover who you are in this new chapter. So I feel really passionate about it. And I just love it. I love it so much.
No, that's good. I mean, that's exactly what you would hope for anybody, right? Like that they find what it is that they're able to. Let me see if I can get my words together.
Yeah.
You can find that crossover where it's something you're good at, something you can be successful with, but it also provides you passion and love and joy and like fulfills you, right? And sometimes you can't get all three,
Mm,
where you might be good at it and it might bring you a lot of joy, but you make no money off of it. So it may not be sustainable, or make money off of it and you're good at it, but it brings you no joy. So like being able to find all three pieces is so crucial. And so that's amazing that you've been able to do it over and over again, actually, because you did love your first businesses. It just, they didn't work out, right? So it wasn't meant to be for forever, or they served their purpose for their one time.
exactly.
So to get you to where you are now. So I think that that's really good that you have not only career entrepreneurial examples, but personal life examples that you can lean on. Because I'd love to talk a little bit about that, like some of the offerings that you have from your website, or maybe we could even do like, what's a day in the life of your client look like? If somebody knocks on your door and they want to work with you, what would their day-to-day work with you look like?
Okay. Well, so most people reach out to me when they're going through a big life transition. So let's start there. So what does that
Sure.
mean? So most people are either going through a divorce, going through a breakup, going through a business breakup. I work with a lot of high achievers who are either like leaving a company they started or changing careers completely, and or I have a lot of people who are high achievers, moms or dads, or who
Hmm.
are parents, and also running successful businesses, have always been slightly like perfectionists, maybe not so slightly, and then they're just burned out. So I would say like that's the kind of person that I end up working with, is somebody who's like, okay, I can't take this anymore, this current reality, the way it's working, because I have no energy left, or I don't have clarity about what the next steps are. And so they reach out to me because a lot of times they've done therapy. And I want to give a shout out to therapy. I think therapy is so helpful. I think self-help is so helpful. Um, but before we get to like what the work part looks like, I just really want to clarify the difference between subconscious and conscious work. So most therapy modalities and subconscious, or pardon me, self-help modalities, they're talking to your conscious mind, which you mentioned earlier. And that's
Right.
at best 3 to 5% of your daily thoughts and habits, right? And so that's not a lot, right? Where the actual change happens is in the subconscious. And so your subconscious programming is running the show of your life. It's between 95 to 98% of your daily thoughts, of your habits, the way that your nervous system functions, the way that you perceive life, that all resides in the subconscious mind. And that was programmed between the ages of 0 to 12. And so that's before you had like the faculties to have discernment of questioning the things that you were learning. Okay. So the reason why I'm mentioning this, and it's really important for your listeners to hear, is that when you're in those life transitions that feel like your whole foundation is being rocked, that is when your programming gets really loud. And so it becomes comfortable to go back to the fear. Over 70% of our subconscious programming is fear based. So it's no wonder that we have a negativity bias as human beings, right? The beautiful thing is that we have these modalities where you can change that subconscious programming and belief structure to be based in well-being, your natural state, based in abundance and love, and what it is that you consciously want to create. So when
Sure.
people reach out to me and they're like, I don't want to do therapy. I've talked in circles for so freaking long. Like, I can't talk about my past anymore. I don't want to overanalyze things. Like, I just want to make progress. That's the place that a lot of people are at when they reach out to me. And so most of my clients are in 6-month or year-long containers. And the reason for that is that gives us enough time to actually do the rewiring of the subconscious beliefs and programming so that they can notice substantial changes. And again, when you're in those big life transitions, like, a lot of the change isn't going to happen overnight, right? Like, it takes
Or
time.
you think they are, yeah, because the
You
event,
spend
the triggering event happens, but like the
right.
decisive moment where you're actually becoming and accepting who you are as a person, no, that happens over time.
It happens over
The same way you lost yourself happened over time. Like ah, no,
And I have
definitely not.
lost yourself, like what you just said, Amanda. I have so many clients who've been in a habit
Yeah.
of abandoning themselves.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. And listen, I've been there too. So I relate, I understand. And so what's so beautiful is when you work with the subconscious, and this is probably one of my favorite parts ever. First and foremost, Psyche is so simple that it can take minutes to change these beliefs. It doesn't take an hour per belief, right? But also, what happens is, because you've created new neural pathways and that belief, your body gives you physical feedback through this process that it did stick, meaning that it is in your subconscious. Because
Right.
the subconscious is 40 million times stronger than the conscious mind. You don't have to do it over and over again. So once that belief is there, you're going to start to notice that you think differently, right? That your perceptions are different about what's possible in life. And it starts to change, first and foremost, your relationship to self, how you view yourself, what you think is possible in your life, how loving you are towards yourself. And then all of your relationships, including ones in career, including ones in your romantic relationship with your family, they're all an outgrowth of that solid foundation that you have within yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
So clients do this work for 6 months to a year, and we meet once a week for every call, and it's about an hour long. And then most of my clients do retreats as well, so whether that's a day retreat or a long weekend retreat, and that gives us an opportunity to do like a deep dive into meeting them where they're at and going through a lot of
Okay.
beautiful healing modalities that I can tell you more about.
Right. Yeah. And are the retreats all over the country, or are they like specific, like you always only do them on this one weekend kind of a thing? Like it's an annual expected thing?
No, so they're private retreats. So
Oh, okay.
business partner, her name's Daniela Miranda. She's the most loving, beautiful soul. She's from Chile, and she is a medicine woman. And so she does shamanic healing, where she guides people through a cacao ceremony during these retreats, which is such a beautiful, beautiful healing modality. It is pure chocolate. You're not hallucinating. It's not ayahuasca or anything else like a lot of
Right.
people are trying these days. But what's really beautiful about it is, because she has so many healing gifts as a medicine woman, it really helps people get out of their head and into their heart. And so then I follow up with that with the PSYCH-K. And so once you're out of your head and into your heart, it's so much easier to access the stuff in your subconscious. So we do that in day retreats all over the country. Then, so clients hire us to either come to them, or they come to us in Charleston or New York City.
Okay.
And then they also hire us to go. I mean, we've been everywhere: the Hamptons, Dominican Republic, Florida. Yeah, kind of all over the place.
Very cool. Okay. And if they wanted to hire you for the day retreat, would they need to be a client beforehand?
They don't have to
Or
be now.
could somebody say, hey, we're doing a workshop with our employees and we want to do a team building kind of exercise
Yeah,
or something like that? Is that available?
that is available, and we have done that, and it's so fun. And we've
Very
also done
cool.
it for groups of girlfriends. Like, we just did one in Charleston for a group of 5 girlfriends who just wanted to have like a day experience where it was different than, day drinking or just going to a meal. They got to have this like beautiful healing formative experience, the
Sure.
whole day together. So,
Oh, and I think that would be very interesting. I have a group of close girlfriends that I travel with a lot, and I think some of them would probably be a little skeptical at first, but it's one of those where I feel like you'd come out of that having an even tighter bond because of such a shared experience. And I'm sure as soon as you get somebody's walls down,
yeah.
the connection or the process of PSYCH-K probably feels really raw. And you're kind of like, whoa, I didn't expect that to come out of me today or to be acknowledged today. So
No.
that's interesting and great that it's available for anybody if they wanted to do that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the modalities that you said. Like you've mentioned PSYCH-K, you've mentioned the ceremonial process. I think I had a question in there for you about let's see. Oh my goodness. The day retreats. Okay. Combination of rituals, ceremonies, and subconscious integration.
Mm.
So I was very curious about those three things that you've mentioned. How did you decide that you needed to use those three during the retreat, and like what level of each amount needed to happen to be like the most successful thing? Because I'm sure you've probably tested it out over 10 years, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what made you decide you needed to use those three things to help your clients, and why does that combination of the three things provide, I guess, the most effective offering?
Yeah. So I had led group retreats for 4 years before Danny came on board and we started doing it together. And I love bringing women together in a sacred space with the whole intention being of having like a growth mindset and being in a supportive, safe space. It's like one of my greatest loves in life. I love, love, love doing it. And and I'd been doing that by myself for quite a while. I mean, I did have somebody teaching yoga, but like I was leading the whole retreat. And then when
Sure.
I did Danny's cacao ceremony, I was like, wait, this is going to help women drop in so much. Like, because it, again, cacao just gets you out of your head and into your heart. There's so many medicinal benefits to it as well, health benefits. But that's like the easiest way of putting it. I just had a cup before I actually hopped on this call.
Oh, great.
What's so great about it is it also calms your nervous system. And so when I experienced that with Danny, I was like, this is just such a great way to help people drop in without it taking days to get there. Because you know how it is when you travel. It's like, it's so fun when you travel, but it takes a couple days to get used to the fact that you're traveling and you're not in work mode.
Right.
Cacao is like, you just drop right in from doing it. And as soon as we experimented with that once, it was like a no brainer to me. So everything I do with my work is very intuitive. Like if I get the sudden message of like, this is a good idea, I just kind of go with it. And this was one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that just took off in a way that I never could have imagined. And so once I saw how grounded and how at peace the women were, and then we went into PSYCH-K, it was like it helped them go so many levels deeper into their healing, but also into their joy. And I think that's what I really love about both of these modalities is that, yes, a lot of times people cry with cacao because it's a release and it's usually like a beautiful thing that they've either seen or experienced because they go on a journey and they get messages. Sometimes they see them, sometimes they hear them, but it's a beautiful release. It like allows them to get into their emotions and out of their head. And the same thing happens with PSYCH-K. It's very intuitive. You're not using your mind, even though we're reprogramming the subconscious. And that's what's so great about it is it allows you to allow change to be much more simple and easy than we make it out to be. And so as a result, there's just so much more relaxation and even joy in the process. Like we are always laughing our butts off during these retreats, even when people are going through like really hard times. I just think there's
Right.
always a chance to find levity. Um, and so we end up like cracking up about just the craziness of life, because we've both been
Sure.
through a lot. And I think that makes it kind of a unique experience in its own right.
Yeah, it sounds profound. People are always telling you you're supposed to hold space for X, Y, or Z. You're supposed to hold space for your emotions, hold space for other people's emotions, hold space for your own growth or your own self-reflection, but actually trying to make that happen. Like, you can hear that and practice that, but actually applying it in real life can sometimes be difficult.
Yeah.
And without somebody else guiding you on what does it actually mean to hold space for yourself, and the fact that you made a safe enough place for these people to come and experience those feelings without judgment and without worry and without concern over the consequences of admitting that those feelings exist or that those thoughts exist. That's huge to know that's available to them, and that they feel that way during this either the rituals or the ceremonies or through the PSYCH-K process. But maybe we should get into that, because clearly you love it, and
I love it.
not a lot of people have heard of PSYCH-K. Like, a lot of people have heard of psychology, of course, but applying that as a modality for an alternative, I suppose, to traditional talk therapy or traditional cognitive behavioral, tools. What is that, and how did you learn about it, and like, how did you get certified in it, kind of a thing? What was the process for that?
Sure. Well, so first, I feel like, listen, I've done enough therapy for all of us. I've gone to therapy for freaking, I went to so much therapy because I had a pretty severe eating disorder all through my adolescence, and was hospitalized many, many times. And so, and I was told I was never going to heal. This is why I got certified. And that's like not the greatest thing to tell a driven Italian woman. Like, then I'm going to
It's
do the exact
scary.
opposite.
Yeah.
Like, no. Now I'm going to heal just because you told me I'm not going to. And so I was just kind of tired of, even, to be honest, even the coaching world. Like, I was like, okay, but I want tangible results. Like, I want to know that this is going to last. I want to know that this is like for clients, right? Like, I want to help people stop repeating generational trauma and belief systems that are like holding them back. And so again, that's back to like when I discovered the power of the subconscious, and that is where true change happens.
Okay.
And at first I learned it through, studying Joe Dispenza. That's what it was. And he is a neuroscientist. And I discovered, like, holy crap, like, this is really where we need to be spending our time, is with the subconscious, not the conscious mind. There's about, I would say maybe 10 at this point, modalities that actually address the subconscious mind. So there's like EMDR, NLP, hypnosis therapy. And after doing a lot of research about those, I discovered PSYCH-K. So that's another one. And that to me made the most sense and sounded to be the most effective. It was the one I was most drawn to.
Okay.
And so the guy who created PSYCH-K, which by the way is the funniest name, it
Yeah.
will oftentimes,
It sounds like a drug, I'll be honest. But it was like,
everybody, it's a drug.
she's so good at PSYCH-K. I'm like, I bet she is. Like, I don't know.
Everybody
Like,
thinks it's a drug. I promise you.
it says the girl that was not allowed to do drugs for 15 years straight, and
Yeah,
now I'm out. So now I know nothing. I'm very behind. I'm quite a nerd. So
I get it.
yeah,
Well,
please continue.
so many people are doing mushrooms now, but it totally sounds like a drug. Guys, it's not a drug. Okay. I'm going to break it down for you real quick. So he was kind of also in the same position as me, except he was a psychotherapist for 20 years. And he was saying to himself, like, there's got to be a way to get my clients better results faster, so that they're not sitting with me for 10 years and finally have the breakthrough, right? He was
Right.
like, how the heck are we going to get people progress? And so he kept asking God, universe, like, please give me something, like, show me a way to make this happen. And essentially the process channeled through him, and he started writing it down, and he's like, okay, I guess I'll try it. And he got like a very clear message about what to do with people in order to access the subconscious and to change it and rewire it. And so he wrote it all down. He started trying it with friends and family. It's using the body in a very specific way of muscle testing, because your body, this is kind of cool to think about. So your body actually is the subconscious mind. So what I mean by that is, you do so many things on autopilot, because think about, the subconscious is autopilot, right? 95 to 90%
Right. Yeah.
of your being. So think about driving. Like, at first you don't know what the heck you're doing, and now you drive and you don't have to tell yourself, like, press the gas, press the brake. You just do it on autopilot from repetition. Well, your body is doing everything on autopilot all day long. And so what they discovered is that when you use this specific form of muscle testing and then you sit in something called whole brain posture, that is allowing you to get into a whole brain state. So your whole brain state is the optimal state for your brain to be in. It means the right and left hemisphere of your brain are effectively communicating and going from a state of stress to a state of well-being, and simultaneously creating new neural pathways, new beliefs, and regulating your nervous system all at the same time. And so what he found is, like, through testing this with friends and family, that they were noticing a difference in their mindset, in their health, in the way they felt overall. And then he partnered with scientists to use EEG brain map testing to show neurologically what was actually happening. And so that's when they discovered everything I just mentioned about creating new neural pathways, the nervous system set points. And he partnered with his friend Bruce Lipton, who's a leading biologist who speaks on epigenetics. And they've traveled the world for the past 30 years teaching people about the power of their beliefs and how it affects their biology and how to actually change them with PSYCH-K. And so once I went to the training and learned it, I was like, I was into it, and I was a little skeptical, if I'm being honest, because again,
Sure.
I had been in
Yeah.
therapy for over 20 years. I healed
Mm-hmm.
from the eating disorder, and I went about it the long way by catching every thought, reframing it, doing like what I knew at the time, right? But I was able to fully heal. And then when I learned that you could change your beliefs in the matter of minutes, and of course, there's a lot of beliefs to change, I was like, is this real? And it was once we got to the point in the training where we learned how to close a trauma loop that was a mind-blowing moment for me,
Okay.
because we all have trauma. We all have stress that's stored in our minds and in our bodies. And he asked, like, if anybody was willing to volunteer to learn how to do it and do it in front of the class. And so I volunteered. And it was about, you had to choose an event that was still very stressful to you when you thought about it and stressful in your body. And I had lost my brother many years before that. I want to say it was 7. I had to really think about that. But, and he died by suicide. So it was like still very traumatic in my system. And I was like, there's no way that this is going to
Right.
close that trauma loop. And so I did it in front of the class, and I was shaking and I was crying. And there was this hilarious woman from Bulgaria who was a therapist of 25 years watching this, right? And there's people from all over the world, every
Mm-hmm.
kind of ethnic background. And all of a sudden, I went from feeling this stress in my body, like I was trembling, I was crying, to it just felt like a lake. Like it was like all of a sudden, just total peace and acceptance came over my whole being. And I never thought that I would get to that place and to experience it. And then for this woman who was watching me physically, she goes, I'm
Right.
healed, like out of nowhere.
Yeah, I believe it. It
I
just happened. She just did it.
was like, oh, wow. Okay. Like it was a physical experience. I wasn't thinking my way there, you know?
Mhm.
And so from that point on, and having literally never felt the stress again since then, I was like, wow, I really need to share this with as many people as I can, because so many people, especially since COVID, have been really struggling, really struggling
Sure.
mentally. And as you guys just heard a lot of my background, like I have so much compassion. I understand what it's like to struggle for so many reasons. And the more that I've shared it with clients, the more that I've seen them transform their own lives and to know that they're capable of it, it's something that I feel really passionate about sharing with as many people as I can.
No, I love that. And before I went into law enforcement, I thought I wanted to go into neuroscience. Like I wanted to go to medical school. And so that's what my degree started out as initially when I was in college. So everything you're saying, just it's lighting off like the nerd in me that's kind of like, oh, I remember all these terms from class and
Mhm.
having to look at, your brain waves and like doing the research studies with the graduate students and the professors. And it was just very cool to actually see somebody say or do or think something, and then you can watch it happen
Yeah.
on screen. And I truly believe that the final frontier is still the human brain. Like there's so much that it can do that we know nothing about. And
Yes.
you hear more and more, doctors that are open to, like, I guess naturopath is kind of one of the ones where people are willing to do more like wellness based things rather than medical doctor stuff. But like your body, the symptoms of what's going on with you sometimes, where the pain shows up is not actually where the problem is. And as somebody with scoliosis, I've had to deal with this a lot with like chiropractors and physical therapists, where like I'll tell them this is my knee hurts, and they're like, okay, but you've got a knot here, so we need to get that out of your muscle to loosen up enough so that we can adjust you, and then you can fit back together again, kind of a thing. And so it doesn't surprise me that you had a very visceral physical reaction to the stress and the trauma that was happening to you, because your brain was holding it in places all over you, probably
All over.
just storing it. And so maybe you also had headaches, you also had stomach pain, maybe you had an aching, like, a joint or something, because you're holding on and you don't realize you're closing your fist so much all the time. And you're like, well, I didn't even notice I was doing that. It's because you're holding your stress in places. And so it's closing the loop for me in terms of like my old life and, younger me wanting to do something like this. And then now everything else that I've learned about my life so far since then, it's like, it makes sense that you can cross the therapy with the physical and the stress. And it's impressive, though, that you were able to close a trauma loop like that, because you're right. I'm sure with traditional treatment, it takes a very long time to even find where the loop begins and then making your way all the way around it. Like it takes a lot of work and effort. So it's incredible that there is a tool out there, or a modality, as you say, that could help you speed up that process, but not in a, I guess, in a good way that's still efficient despite being speedy, right? Like it's still effective, because you would think that, oh, hurry up and get it done quick would mean like, oh, it's snake oil or something. And it's like, no, actually it's just more efficient. Your brain has the ability to do that quickly if you let it. But
Well,
how
yeah,
do you find that out?
the subconscious is 40,000 times stronger,
Right.
more powerful than the conscious mind. So this whole thought of like me going to therapy to talk about my brother for 10 years, like it actually would have gotten me nowhere. And some may argue that it's actually just creating more trauma in the body through the repetition of it, right? And so the subconscious is capable of, it doesn't mean that the event didn't happen, right? Like I went through a divorce a couple years ago. It doesn't mean that that
Sure.
didn't happen, but that's when I like really doubled down on subconscious work and like changing my tendency towards codependency. And now that's what I work with so many people going through divorce, because
Yeah.
it's really an opportunity to, okay, well, I'll get to that in a second, but the point is that your subconscious is capable of closing that trauma loop. And what that does is it changes your perception. So it doesn't mean that that event didn't happen. It doesn't mean that that person's right or wrong or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just that you're no longer carrying the stress in your body, so that when that stressful event, whatever it may be, comes up again, a memory of it, you can look at it, understand what you learned from it, and then go on with enjoying your life. And I guess that's what I love so much about PSYCH-K in general, getting to like even the part about divorce, is like it really is an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
heal, to consciously choose the belief structure that you want to be living with. Like the one that you inherited from your family and the people that raised you do not have to carry that belief structure with you moving forward, because it's either going to keep repeating history or you get to pave a new way for yourself. And so when anybody's in a life transition, naturally, like they're going to question what they believe, what they want to create moving forward, right? And so when you
Sure.
work with the subconscious, it's the most powerful way to chill your nervous system out, get resourced, help you realize that you have more clarity and access to choices than you realize, and then be super deliberate about what you want to believe is possible for you in this life, because that's what you get to do. It doesn't have to be so complicated.
Yeah. No, oof. Easier said than done, right? Like,
Well, of course.
of course. Yeah. No. Well, kind of on that topic then, because before we started recording, we did talk a little bit about like getting out of your own way and
Yeah.
trying not to have so many blockers and stuff in life. But I'm curious, if a client were to come to you and they say that they're feeling, kind of stuck in life or they're blocked, what is it that you would offer them or help them do to identify what's actually blocking them versus what they think is blocking them? Because based on what, just the background research I was doing before the show, it kind of sounds like sometimes that might be the case when people come to you. Like they think they know what's going on. Then after they go through some of the modalities with you, they realize later, oh, it's actually not that problem at all. Like my problem's rooted here. So I'm curious if you could talk about like, what would you do to help a client that says they're feeling blocked and like realizing the difference between what they think it is versus what it actually is?
Well, there's two things. The first being is like that would be a great opportunity to dive into PSYCH-K. I'm thinking about a male client in particular. I'll use him as an example. Like he's extremely successful, has a beautiful family, a great life, but was just so burned out, right? Like just
Sure.
it's like there's no way, even though, I've created the success that I have always wanted. A, it never feels like enough, which is so common with high achievers. And B, I'm exhausted. Like I can't enjoy any of it because I'm so busy. And I have a fear, this is the block. I have a fear that I'm going to lose it all if I don't continue doing it this exact way. So you feel super stuck because it's like, this isn't sustainable because I have no energy left and I'm exhausted and I'm reaching for alcohol and food and like things that aren't healthy habits, but it's like instant gratification when I'm not feeling great. And simultaneously, I'm so scared that I'm going to lose it all. And this is where we use PSYCH-K because through several phone calls, we were able to discover, well, he was able to discover limiting beliefs that he had around how to create success. And what really was potent and powerful for him was closing a trauma loop around something that happened in his childhood regarding his family having money and having a successful business and then suddenly losing it. And
Sure.
so this is like such a great real life example for the listeners because something like that happening, of course, you're probably not, he wasn't thinking about it in his day to day life at all, right? He hadn't thought about it in years and years. However, when he closed that trauma loop and changed the perception, suddenly he realized how much that had been inflicting fear in his daily life, in the way that he thought about business, in the way that he thought about money, in the way he felt about himself. And so it created, when he closed the trauma loop, it created a profound sense of security and safety within himself. And it informed different ways of thinking with his business moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a great example, and thank you for sharing that. And of course, obviously, only share however much you can with regarding privacy, of course, for any of your clients. But I do think that that is an excellent example. A lot of people maybe don't realize that like you're judging yourself based on a past experience, or at least for myself, I'm sure one of my big blockers would probably be fear of being a disappointment, and it'd be like, okay, but why? What happened in that moment to make you think that you would ever become a disappointment? And like, how do you close off that thing so that you're not afraid of moving forward with your life or taking a risk, right? Like you don't want to, if you're afraid of doing the thing that you thought you used to do or had happened to you again, you do everything you can to not repeat it, even if it is subconscious to you, right? So it's kind of like, I doubt you're not repeating it at all, but if you keep going down this path, you might, and you got to be careful, and you don't want that to happen, right, to your client, of course. So I think that that's great, especially if you were able to do it pretty or relatively quickly. Like, if he signed up for the 6-month or the 12-month and you kind of hit something good at 3-month mark, like that would, to me, would encourage me as a client. That's showing me actionable results and he can apply it immediately, right?
Yeah.
So
well, what's beautiful is he said, like, he wrote a testimonial and he said that he'd made more progress in 6 months from our work together than he had in his whole lifetime of going to therapy, because he'd been going since he was super young.
sure, yeah.
And I'm only sharing that because I I'm such a believer in this work. This isn't about me doing the work. It's about the modality, about like when you change this programming, then you're able to hear that wisest voice inside of you. Because when you don't have fear dominating your daily thoughts, then you can hear your intuition, which is your direct line to source, God, universe, whatever you believe in. right?
Mhm.
And that is
Yeah.
the wisest voice that always knows what's best for you. It always knows what's in the highest good for you with Amanda, with your career, with the changes that you want to make or wanted to make. Like that voice is speaking to you all day long. Whether you're listening to and the best part, acting on it, that's
Yeah.
pretty much based on if you have a belief structure that supports that, right? Because it's a hell of a lot easier to trust it and act on it when you know it's safe to do so. But if it's been drummed into you that you have to use logic and reasoning and always have, that part of your mind working, and that's where you make all decisions from, a lot of times people are scared to trust that voice because it has them deviate from the path that they think they're supposed to take, right? But that
Right.
that voice is always guiding you towards the highest good for you in your life, whatever that may be.
You offer, I guess some people call it trusting your gut, like the
Yeah,
just versus an intuition or
sure.
hearing the voice talk to you in whatever way that you receive it. But like some people, or at least I feel like I have a pretty good like high emotional intelligence, and so I'm very aware of what other people are thinking or feeling, and an empath and whatnot. And I feel like I've had some very intuitive moments in my life, and but I don't know if I can always hear my intuition. Do you offer to your clients like how to do that too, or is that kind of rolled up into the PSYCH-K? Because I feel like sometimes you got to just get into baseline, like trusting figuring out how to listen to your intuition, what the difference is, and then then you can move on. Or I don't know, like, because what if somebody comes to you and they say like, I don't even know what my intuition is or how to develop it? Do you help them with that?
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking this because it's such an important question. Yes, to answer your question, I do help them with
Yeah.
that. And the first thing is to get your nervous system regulated because if you don't have a regulated nervous system, it is very hard to hear your intuition because your body and mind are in survival mode.
Okay.
So that's what I do with my clients all in the beginning. It's like about getting their nervous system regulated. The reason why I'm so passionate about PSYCH-K is again, it is the modality to help change the conditioning to bring people back to who they truly are, not the fear-based beliefs that make them feel disconnected to self. And so first we would regulate the nervous system, then we would get the belief structure. And all throughout these sessions, I'm asking, like, what's your intuition telling you? I'm having them check in with themselves throughout the day. I give them like really helpful tools to start really listening to that more than the fear based tape, right? And then as we get their belief structure on board with that, it becomes easier and easier to do. And I also created a journal. I'm a big journaler. I love
Yeah.
journaling. All my
Let's
clients
talk
love
about it.
journaling. And that is a really helpful tool to help people listen to their intuition more than their mind. And so there's over 60 prompts in the journal that kind of help you move through the stuff in your mind and then get to that wisest voice. Because so many people have said to me, like, I don't know how to journal. I don't know the questions to ask. So I just decided to provide the questions that I've asked my clients over the past 10 years and help you kind of move through the muck and get to the wisdom inside of you.
I love that. Journaling definitely, I think, had a great boom during COVID because a lot of people were,
Yeah.
you're home and you're self-reflecting a lot more than you may have normally been doing. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Case Kenny. He came on the show along. He was one of my first. He was my first guest to come on the show, and we talked about his journals and how he used those to help people build, a more calm mindset, but
Mhm.
specifically practicing mindfulness and
Yeah.
building your self awareness. If you haven't done that before, he gives you like prompts and journals that you can follow, like 60, 30, 60, 90-day kind of style, and they were very helpful. And it was great to have him on to kind of talk about that. So I'm glad that you brought up your journal too, because I think a lot of people do resonate with that. Or if they don't want to talk out loud or they're just not ready to say what it is that they're thinking and feeling, journaling, I always thought was such a good way to just get it out.
Yes.
Like get it out of your brain, put it on paper. You can light it on fire later. Like, I don't know, but like just getting it out actually helps so much, even if you're not ready to say it. So journaling, I always think is a great option for people. So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Um, I was also curious on your website, there's a quote there that says, there comes a time in every woman's life when she stops looking around, asking the world for permission, and instead she gives it to herself. And that's precisely the moment she comes fully alive. And that really struck with me. Giving men always seem to have such a hard time with giving themselves permission to do anything, right? And especially in today's day and age, it's entirely possible that the ability to do that in our society might be challenged. And
Yeah.
I could understand people being very afraid of that. But when you do get to a place where you feel like I am going to be exactly who I am unashamedly, you do kind of have this whole thing lifted off of you. You have a new sense of freedom. So I was curious why you added that quote to your website and if you had your moment ever, and when did you feel like you became fully alive?
First of all, I'm so glad that landed with you, and I couldn't agree with you more that so
Yeah, I was,
many of us women have felt
yeah.
that way or feel that way currently. Um, that quote is actually over a picture of me running naked down the beach. And there's a reason for that because, yes, there was a moment. Uh, I I had just gone through a divorce, and I'm really lucky in the sense that I'm good friends with my former husband. We have a beautiful little girl. In many ways, it was like what you could consider, I guess, a good divorce on all accounts. But it gutted me in a way nothing has ever gutted me in my life. Um, I cried more in that year and a half than I've cried in my entire life. Like it rocked me to
Sure.
my absolute core. And especially because we have a child, I think that makes it so difficult. Not to say that it's not difficult when you don't have a child. It's just,
No, of course.
uh,
There's an added layer.
yeah, it's just an
Yeah.
added layer for sure. Um, and and I when I was considering, like, we'd been together for 15 years, so it was like, do you get a divorce, do you not get a divorce? I was so unhappy, and I knew he was unhappy, but because of, both of our parents are still married, all the things, right? Like, we have a young kid. It was the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. And as you guys all know at this point, like, the intuition is the thing I rely on the most. But there was so much noise in my head around this topic that it was really hard to listen to that voice. And when I finally did, and we made the decision, it was as if I don't even know how to explain it. It was like I took that picture of me running down the beach because that's how free I felt. And I
Mm-hmm.
I like free to just be completely myself at 40 years old. Like, the first time where I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care. I don't want to care how much gossip there is about me at this point. Like, I am making this decision because it's the best thing for my soul and for my family. And we're going to thrive because of this decision. It may be messy, but like, I have to do this for myself, or I am going to feel like a shell of myself for the rest of my life. And so it like, that quote came, that, it wasn't a quote at the time, but like, those words came through me when I realized, like, that's it. Like, you have to stop looking and asking for people's opinions. Like, should I do this? Is this the best thing for me? And this is in regards to everything, your relationship,
Sure.
your career, how you parent. Like, we live in a world where there's just so much access to information. I think we're in like information overload. There's so many opinions with social media. It's so easy to get caught up in what other people are doing. And to me, it was like, no, I had to silence all of that and give myself the permission to do what I know it was best for me. And in doing that, it was the most life changing thing in the world for me. And I've seen it over and over again with my friends and with my clients, of like, when they stop asking for permission and give it to themselves, that's when their soul is so lit up. It's not from taking other people's advice. Very
Right.
rarely.
Yeah. And I had a moment a few weeks back where I was doing a batch day of just interviews back to back for the podcast to try and help me get ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
And I have a saved voice note from when I sent it to our mutual friend, Justin,
Oh,
who was helping me with the podcast coaching and stuff. And I sent it to him. I was kind of like, this is it. Like, this is what I've been waiting to feel like for so long.
yeah.
And like, it's so exciting. And like, I'm getting teary now, but like my listeners know that I'm a crybaby. they've heard me have to pause episodes before, but
Yeah.
no, I have a saved voice note from when I told him. I was like, thank you for setting this up. Thank you for helping me realize that like I am actually good at this, and this is actually something that I want, and I haven't felt like that in so long. So when you're talking about like lighting your own soul on fire or like feeling internally lit up, like it is so hard to find that. It is so hard to make that happen, but once it does, it changes everything. It changes your whole perception of who you are and where you are in that moment, and like all you want to do is keep chasing exactly that
Yeah.
again. So
Oh, I love
that
so much for you. That makes me so
Yeah,
happy.
sorry. I was like, I didn't think we'd get here today. Like,
Please,
I was going to listen to you, and we were going to talk about your success,
no, I love
not me still being lost and
no.
trying to get found, which is the whole point of the show. But this is great though for anybody that's feeling lost and you need help. Ash is a really good resource.
No,
No,
I
she'll be
love
great.
this because, I want to speak to this first and foremost, Amanda. I love that you
Sure.
found something that makes you feel
Yeah.
that lit up and teary eyed. And like, that is just, again, your body giving you those beautiful signals that you're on track.
Yeah.
And I went, back to that quote, like, and why I created my new chapter journal. That's what it's called. My new chapter is like, I want to help every single person that I can know that they are a powerful creator and that they are here to create their life. They're not here to live it by default, right? And so the more you listen to and honor those cues where you feel teary eyed, where you feel lit up, where you feel the most magnetic, excited, joyful version of yourself, like
Yeah.
follow those cues, because that is your intuition speaking to you. That is your soul saying like, more of this, please. And because of the conditioning that we've all received from society, we try to drown it out with logic and with what our brain's telling
Yeah.
us. But
Mm-hmm.
again, this is the whole reason why I like going to the subconscious, just to help you ultimately get out of your own way so that you can live the most fulfilling life. Because when your conditioning supports you being in that joy and following the thing that you say, this is it, and you get teary eyed and you want to do hours and hours of it and you don't even notice that time passes, like,
Right.
what's better than that? Or that you can have a truly fulfilling relationship that's so intimate and vulnerable and honest and supportive, like, and you're worthy of receiving that and just enjoying it. Like, what is better than that? And we
Oh,
all
nothing.
deserve that level of fulfillment in this life. Nobody's
I agree with you. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, I love what you do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Well, speaking of that, I know your time is very important, and I don't want to take up too much more of it, but I do have a few final questions that I normally ask all of the guests
Mm-hmm.
to kind of cover based on the theme of the show. So I was curious, how do you define success, and what does success look like to you?
That's a great question. How do I define success? I would say success is being completely yourself everywhere you go.
Yeah, that's a really good one, and something everyone should strive for, I believe. What would you say has been your greatest achievement?
Oh, wow. Falling in love with the woman I've become.
Ooh, yeah.
I
Took a
mean,
while to meet
yeah,
her,
there are
I'm sure.
achievements like work wise, like, yeah,
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be. That can
feel
be your
like
answer.
being comfortable with myself is the greatest achievement, because then I can help other people do the same thing. Like, if I wasn't walking that walk, how could I help others do that? How could I help my daughter be comfortable with who she is? And I
Right.
think when you're comfortable with who you are, you just want to put out more goodness in the world and treat other people with kindness. So, yeah, I would say that's probably my greatest achievement, because trust me, you guys, I was like as far as you can go on the other end of the spectrum. Like, I hated who I was for so long. That's why I had such a severe eating disorder. So to be able to say that
Yeah.
to you now is definitely the greatest achievement for sure.
I'm sure it feels miraculous sometimes when you can look back on everything that you've done and
Yeah.
the different iterations of yourself from, back then to now. And the woman you've become truly is somebody that you love and care for. And I think that that's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of your current goals right now? What are you working on in 2024?
My current goals are I'm going to be launching a podcast soon. So I'm excited to have some
Oh, okay.
conversations. Um, to share the journal with as many people as I can, and to do some more retreats. We've done 35 retreats at this point in the past year and a half. And I'm excited to just continue sharing this transformative experience with people. And then my other goal is to just have as much fun as I possibly can with my life. Yeah.
Good. I love that, as you should. Those are gonna be really good ones. And I'm excited. I will definitely keep a lookout for when retreats are available or if there might be one near Nashville. Or I could have a good excuse if you do one in Charleston. It'll be a great reason to go back there
Yeah.
and visit. Yeah. So, if you could give yourself advice 10 years ago, what would it be?
Oof. 10 years ago.
What was Ash doing 10 years ago and what did she need to know?
My God, I was about to become a mom. Well, no, just, yeah. Okay. I was about to get pregnant. What would I tell myself? The more you listen to your intuition, the more empowered you're going to be. And not just
Okay.
listen to it, but you've got to act on it, no matter how much your logic tries to tell you otherwise.
That because yeah, you're right in terms of you can hear it and you can think it, but you actually have to do it if you want to change your life or you want to take control of your future. The only person in charge of that is you.
Yeah.
For sure. So I love that. And then to close out, what is your final advice for people who are feeling lost in their current life situation and they know that they need to make a change, but they don't really know where to start?
Ooh. First of all, I want to encourage them to be super compassionate with themselves, because when you're in that big change and you feel like you don't have clarity, it can be really easy to be hard on yourself. And so I would encourage anybody listening to put your hands on your heart and tell yourself that it's okay to feel all of your feelings. It's important to feel all your feelings and to know that this is an amazing opportunity to start to create change starting today. And if you get really, really quiet and ask your intuition to tell you one thing that you can do today to move in the direction that you want to go, to just sit in silence and to wait till you hear that wise whisper of a voice, and then to act on what you hear, and to do that repeatedly over and over again. And maybe it's reaching out and asking for help. Maybe it's buying a journal. Maybe it's going to a yoga class or going for a walk on the beach. But like those small things that because here's what I will say. I see this time and again, and I experienced it. Insecurity comes from hearing your intuition and ignoring it and acting in the opposite. So like insecurity comes from us not acting on that inner knowing. So the more that you act on it, the more secure you feel in yourself, the more capable you feel of creating what you want. So it's not just listening to, you're hearing the theme of what I'm saying over and over again, but it's acting on it. That is what's going to help you create the forward momentum that you want to create in your life.
I love that. The forward momentum and building up the self-confidence through those daily actions. And even if it sounds silly, like I wouldn't normally go to a yoga class, but I guess I'm going to go today. We're going to test it out. And you just got to go with it. Okay. I love that. Ash, thank you so, 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 so much. This was such a phenomenal episode. I feel like I've learned more about myself, but more about your process and PSYCH-K and how to, go through a transformative coaching process and what that would be like and the opportunities that are in that realm. And so I really do appreciate you bringing that to the show and sharing your stories with the audience. And again, being so open and raw with your truth and your history. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to what you've talked about. And so I really just do appreciate you sharing your story and your journey with us today. Let everybody know how they can find you or interact with you. If they want to buy your journal, how do they do that? What's up? What you got? What are your
First of all,
deets?
thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy speaking with you, and sharing you with your listeners and hearing about your story too. So I
Yeah,
just
no,
wanted to say,
you're welcome back anytime.
oh, thanks. I would love to come back. Okay, so where everybody can find me is ashcebulka.com, my website. And that's where you can read all about the offerings, the retreats, the coaching. And then if you go under the shop button on the nav bar, that's where you'll see my new chapter. And that's the journal that you can buy. And it's a lot cheaper than therapy. And it is so helpful because I've had people tell me like they were never a journaler and now they're like so devoted to doing it every day. It's because there's really helpful prompts that make you, dive into self-reflection and help you access the clarity you're seeking. And so I highly recommend checking that out. And then you can also find me on Instagram. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Fabulous. All right, everybody. We're going to make sure I will add all of that to the show notes so you can find Ash and connect with her for asking any of your questions or signing up for her retreats or potentially working with her in the future. And as you know, you can like, subscribe, share the show with all of your friends, family, anybody you think that could benefit from this process or the show. You can find me at askwhatnowpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions for the show or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, you can send it there to the email. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok as Podcast for the Lost. And then my personal account is amanda.k.powers. And, check us out, check Ash out. And remember, wanderers are always welcome.